Good morning, Nigerians. A good way to start the Thursday meeting. And TJ, let's go with what we have.
Let's jump into what we have today.
Exactly.
Good morning and welcome to FCT Brief. Today, we spotlight a concern that affects nearly every bank account holder, and that is the rising and often confusing mix of multiple bank charges, from maintenance fees to stamp duties, transfer levies, and unexpected deductions. Nigerians continue to question whether these charges are fair, transparent, or aligned with global best practices. Many customers report feeling shortchanged, overbilled, or simply left in the dark about what exactly they are paying for. As digital transactions soar and more citizens join the formal financial system, the pressure mounts on regulators and financial institutions to protect customers and rebuild trust.
The question now is, are the current policies strong enough to shield Nigerians from exploitative banking practices, or is it time for a full-scale rethink? This morning, we will examine the gaps, the implications for financial inclusion, and the urgent need for reforms that puts fairness and transparency at the center of banking operations. But to help us get into these issues, we are joined by Chetam Nwala, an activist and lawyer who has consistently championed the rights of consumers and the need for accountability in financial institutions. His insight will guide our conversation as we explore what a truly customer-centered banking system should look like. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you and good morning.
You're welcome.
I know this is not strange to you, and you are one of the many Nigerians, maybe millions of Nigerians that get deducted monthly for some charges, and sometimes you wonder what are these things meant for, from 50 naira to 150, and to a lot of people, insignificant. By the time you look at the cumulative and the millions, you realize that this is huge deduction. Now, why do we have this despite the regulation of the CBN?
Now, thank you once again. Now, one of the things I must draw to our attention is, we have always cried about this issue of corruption within the Nigerian sector and the Nigerian system. And we find that in every sector. With this administration, and even the previous administration, or all administrations keep saying that they are fighting this corruption. But we see that these persons who are involved in these corrupt practices and corrupt acts get to every day find a new means of establishing and sucking the people dry, which is a very sad and unfortunate situation. Now, the CBN naturally should regulate activities of the banks. It is not the first time customers are complaining about illegal deductions. And we see multiple deductions, and in short, you wake up and you see 10 naira has been removed from your account. You think it's nothing. And you ask yourself, how many 10 naira have been removed from how many customers' accounts in a space of maybe 1 hour? And every bank within Nigeria does this. How are the customers protected? What are the laws there to protect the banks, or it is there to protect the customers? But I can tell you for free that nobody is protecting the customers. And even when customers cry out, when customers shout about bank actions, nobody seems to listen. There are no mechanisms or no measures that has been put in place to solving this crisis and these challenges, because you don't expect me to go to the bank to start asking questions because of 15 naira that was deducted from my account. Now, we have also seen situations where, beyond the bank charges, we have seen situations where deductions are made from accounts, even where a situation where people approach the courts and the court give decisions on these particular issues. These banks do not obey court orders and court decisions on these issues. I can tell you for free, there's a matter I'm currently handling that involves one of the major banks in this country, Polaris Bank and Polazanda. I tell you for free. Now, we are talking about, the government has consistently talked about encouraging investors to come and invest. A transaction that happened in 2019 where we saw a situation where because the company wanted to buy an equipment from a foreign partner, they sent in naira to Polaris Bank.
Please, let's try.
Okay, they sent in naira to the said bank, and having sent in that naira to the bank, what did the bank do? The bank had to buy dollar from CBN. Now, along the line, that transaction failed. This transaction happened in 2019. By 2025, the bank is saying, the company is saying, give us back our money. What did the bank do? The bank said, no, we are going to give you in 2019 exchange rate. Then you ask yourself, you have used this money to do businesses for over the years now, and you want to pay me in 2019 exchange rate. The company approached the court. Court gave judgments. What did Polaris Bank do? Polaris Bank, the bank actually, as it were, went ahead to make sure that these monies in question, that the court judgment that was given would not be obeyed.
All right, Mr.
So we are now seeing situations where banks do not obey court decisions. And we expect investors to come in. And this is where we're having these challenges. So the regulators must actually become serious with it.
I feel your pause in this situation, and I'm sure that a lot of Nigerians share in this pain. But I am aware that, the CBN has a guide for bank charges that regulate these banks. And I would also say that I'm sure a lot of the public do not know when they have issues like this, how to channel their complaints. Now, would you say that the fault comes from the CBN, from not properly educating the public about these channels of complaints to, ensure that their transactions are safe and they are protected? Because oftentimes they are being exploited by these banks. Let's not cover it up. This is an actual situation that happens. So is the fault from the CBN or the customer or the banks themselves?
One of the problems and one of the most moribund agencies we have currently in the country is the National Orientation Agency, that is supposed to educate the people on government new policy. But you ask yourself, what level of job do they do regularly to educate the people? And CBN, as an institution, the public relations department, how do they reach out to the public? How do they educate Nigerians about how to go about it? And what mechanism have they put in place? Before now, we saw a situation where CBN came up with a platform where you can make complaints about a failed transaction. A failed transaction. And you ask yourself, how effective is that particular platform? How has this platform held these banks accountable? Because we have seen banks do things the way they like, carry out actions the way they like, and when customers complain, like this Polaris Bank issue I was talking about.
Please,
like,
sorry about
that. No, but when customers complain about this, you discover that these people have a way of covering themselves. And let me say this, the corruption in the system. Recently, the House of Representatives set up an ad hoc committee to investigate illegal bank charges. But you ask yourself, what exactly has that committee done? It is just business as usual. Of course, they will invite bank executives, they will come. When they come, they have a situation where these bank executives, what do? They go ahead to, these bank executives will go ahead, sort out with the National Assembly members. When they sort out with them, the matter dies. This has continued, and this is the problem we are having right now. So if we must progress as a people, people must be held accountable. Banks must be held accountable. And trust me, first of all, the Nigerian investor who is building an industry that is supposed to employ Nigerians should be encouraged. But from what we see these days, they are not being encouraged. They are discouraging investors from coming into the country to invest. Because if a local investor cannot get his money, like the situation we painted earlier on, cannot get his money, then it simply means that a foreign investor who does not know the Nigerian terrain so well would be lost completely. Okay, and court orders are also not being obeyed.
Chetan, let's come to these. We know that there are regulations in the CBN to control the operations of these banks. Probably it's not that effective. I remember a time I spoke with my colleague and she gave me a link. If your money was illegally deducted and you can make complaints. I remember I made the complaint and I started getting sent mails to about hundreds of people coming to me, and I felt my own complaint was lost in the mist. Now people are now saying that, is it time to have a banking ombudsman so that we can handle this? Customers can easily approach the ombudsman. If you have complained with your bank, if you have complained about deductions and all that. Because we're talking about millions of Nigerians. Some are on the low income end. So would that also help if the present regulation by the CBN is not that effective? Should we elevate to having a banking ombudsman?
See, you know, the problem we've kept on having in this country, we have continuously had a situation where we set up one body or the other. Or the problem we have is that we have more strong men than strong institutions. We have very weak institutions. And these weak institutions have continued to be the problem of this nation. So even if you set up an ombudsman today for the banking sector, of course, the CBN already has something that looks like an ombudsman within its own arrangement. But we need to strengthen it and make it more effective. We need to strengthen it because ordinarily, the Polazanda issue we raised would have naturally gone to CBN to make these complaints. That, CEO, this is what happened between me and XYZ Bank. And at the end of the day, this bank has refused to pay me my money. And this is it. Without first of all going to the courts. But they had to go to the court because these people who are supposed to protect consumers, who are supposed to protect the customers, are not protecting the customers. And let me say this, what message do we pass? What message are we sending out to the public?
So, Mr. Chetam, are you saying that this is a vacuum in the legal system? Because you're saying that there are some strong forces that actually encourage this. There is an institution set up, I think the Consumer Protection, that is an institution of government. How functional is that institution in actually protecting customers, especially in cases like this?
See, I sympathize with anybody who is in charge of consumer protection. You know why I sympathize with them? Because the work to be done for consumers within this country is enormous. And in almost every sector, we find these issues there. In almost every sector, we find these issues there. It is very, very enormous for them to do. So I greatly sympathize with them. Because when you look at it, okay, yesterday we saw something that happened in Guarimpa where one of the ombudsmen went down to stop the FCDA development control from demolishing a particular side of Guarimpa. And we saw that happen. How many of those type of things are going on? And how many are they dealing with? So you ask, the problem we keep having is that our laws do not work. We have great laws, we have people manning these offices, but they do not work. And when they don't work, you don't expect foreigners to come in and invest into a nation like this. We must first put our house in order. We must first sort out these issues. Let me tell you for free. You know, when you look at the banking sector, we know the banking sector in Nigeria is very corrupt. Every day they talk about dividends, they yield dividends. Dividends are people's individual monies they collected through corrupt means. They collected this money from people through corrupt means. And virtually all the banks is actually involved. Just imagine the scenario I painted. Imagine that type of situation. Now, what confidence will me, as a customer in this Polaris Bank or in this bank, would actually come and say, what confidence will I have to continue to banking with this bank? So it's a challenge. It's a very big challenge. We need to deal with it.
Breather now. We need to take a quick break now. We'll come back to you. Hold your thoughts. Don't go anywhere. We still have more on the program. Stay with us, O'Brien. Back, we'll continue our conversation now with Mr. Chatham. Now, a lot of people now are beginning to shift from this normal mainstream banks and move to the fintechs. Yeah. That is, you know, the popular thing now. And it seems like probably the interest rates are more favorable on those platforms. Would you say they are quite safe and this is an option that Nigerians should begin to consider?
In Kenya, there is something called M-Pesa, where the moment I have your phone number, just like we have with most of these fintech banks also, the moment I have your phone number, I definitely have your account details. I can transfer money to your account, and it's seamless. The moment you do it, it's not even an app. It's not an app. It's a code. So transactions are seamlessly done. Now you come back to Nigeria and you look at the fintech banks. The fintech banks are more active than our conventional banks. They work faster. Customer service excellent. Complaints are easily addressed. But the challenge with them is that they only have one office across the country, or just few branches across the nation. These conventional banks, now you ask yourself, remember there was a time these conventional banks were seriously fighting against these fintech banks. Because the future of Nigerian banking system is the fintech bank, if you ask me. They are more effective. So why can't these other conventional banks upgrade their own system to be like the fintech banks, to render better services than we are seeing right now. Why can't they upgrade it? We have seen a situation where you make a transaction today before the person gets the alert sometime tomorrow. But in most of these fintech banks, the moment you're dropping it within seconds, less than 30 seconds, the person is getting the alert. Both as a text and even the money is also dropping. Okay. So what are these fintech banks doing differently that these banks are not also doing? Okay, sorry, before I come, let me conclude this thought. And don't also forget, these fintech banks we are talking about, they don't actually charge. So, but they're still making profits. Why are these banks, these conventional banks, charging so much?
Okay, is it now time where we won't consider the operations of the fintech banks and our traditional banks? Is it time for us to now say, okay, let's come to a platform and look at, do we upscale their operations? You talked about they don't have their offices across the country. Should the CBN not give them the kind of license that will make them have that spread? Because it's all about service delivery. And a lot of times there's this example that you may transfer and the transfer failed. And but you're deducted real time when you make the transfer. But when they're going to do the reversal, that money that you pay, that it costs you, is never reversed. Now, do you as a consumer have a right to lay claim that, look, this transaction was not successful, though you deducted me. Now you have returned my original principal capital. How about the deduction you made? Don't Nigerians have the right to lay claims to this?
Of course we do. But you see, that's why I am not also of the opinion that we should upscale the activities of the fintech banks into to become like the conventional banks, because we have seen that the conventional banks are not reliable. They are not actually helping matters. But as of today in Nigeria, it is only the fintech banks that make business easy in Nigeria. As of today. Because everybody who has a conventional bank has a fintech bank. Yeah. When you go to the street, for those who actually do everyday business, they have a fintech bank because they collect monies from the fintech banks and they transfer to the conventional banks, because conventional banks have except you want to collect very bulky money, then now you can now use the conventional bank to receive the money. But most of our daily transactions, and if you check, if you look at the statistics, you discover that fintech banks, they do more transactions on a daily scale than the conventional banks. So the conventional banks, but the conventional bank, they charge you more for doing transactions with them. Their services are not effective. They are not upgrading. So it also tells you that we actually have a problem. We have a problem, and we must deal with it. But the CBN must step up its game, because the CBN is looking like one corrupt entity that has not stepped up its game over time and has allowed these conventional banks, because let me tell you, the Nigerian backhand way of paying and collecting bribe is still there. But who is investigating it? We should naturally rely on the National Assembly. The earlier matter I was talking about, the National Assembly, if the company had written to the National Assembly making these complaints, they should have called the CBN to order, and the CBN will actually call the bank to discuss this, to deal with this particular issue. But what do we have? We also have a National Assembly that is also not serious with dealing with real issues. Because when you come and make one complaint, what do you have? You have a system and a situation where nobody is treating it very well, or the matter is treated casually. I give an example with the EFCC.
Since you mentioned the National Assembly, sorry if I may come in here. Since you mentioned the National Assembly, we have seen time and time again some of these banking laws being updated. Now, are you saying that this is just a show? It's not functioning? How
effective has this? We just have the new Finance Act. How effective has it been? And you know, I was even before I delve into that. Let me just draw this line on the issue of EFCC. If you don't have it, if your transaction is not up to between 10 million and above, EFCC will not actually deal with your issues. But this was the commission that was brought out for financial crimes. EFCC will not look at your petition. So the National Assembly, that is supposed to be a guy that makes a lot of law. We have lots of beautiful laws. You know, I worked at the National Assembly at some point, and I must tell you that that place is just a jamboree. It is not a serious place. No serious business is going on there. And especially, we now have a situation that the National Assembly, the presidency determines what happens at the National Assembly. Because when you start having legislatures who are supposed to hold the president accountable, the executive accountable, with his ministers and appointees accountable, you now have them singing on your mandate almost on a daily basis. Of course, these days we have also seen judges also joining that particular charade. But when you now have them sing these things, how do you expect them to hold the system accountable? How do you expect them to hold these banks accountable?
I would like to correct you there. The judges were not actually singing, from what we know. The judges were not actually singing.
They were not into it.
Let's set the record straight there. Now, I saw like a notification from a particular bank informing its customers that starting from January next year, it wouldn't be accepting transactions below, say, 10 million, 12 million. Maybe those smaller transactions should go to other smaller banks. Now, do you think these conventional banks should begin to think like that and leave all the smaller transactions to the fintech banks?
Why should I have multiple bank accounts? Why should I have multiple bank accounts? When I can run one bank account and seamlessly do my business, and the bank account is actually effective, why should I have multiple bank accounts? So if you're saying that we should do the large-scale transactions with conventional banks, the small one with the fintech bank, for me, I don't actually subscribe to that idea. I simply feel that we should just upscale our system. The conventional banks should step up. They should step up with their activities, especially their online activities, because let me say this, everything has gone digital now. So we must be thinking of digitalization. Your bank app should be working. We shouldn't be having lots of network issues. We should have moved past this particular stage, but we are still struggling and creeping. But what are the fintech banks doing differently that these conventional banks are not doing? It simply means that they are also not interacting with them. They see them as their enemies. They try to kill them so that, because a lot of people have moved to these fintech banks. And the conventional banks are also suffering as a result of that. That is why you see all these illegal charges, illegal withholding of people's funds and all that, even when the people are demanding for this fund. And when a customer complains, you send police after them.
Chetan, let's look at this aspect you just raised, that a particular bank is saying, look, they won't handle transaction that is below X amount. Would you subscribe that probably will bring back the days we have merchant banks? Because if we all collapse all those banks and we now have commercial banks, why would you have that limit to what I can deal with if you are my banker, for instance? So should we now have merchant banks where, okay, a certain volume of transaction can go into those designated merchant banks and other transaction goes into some other commercial banks?
I don't think there is a need. In my opinion, I don't think there is a need. I think that the system we have right now, Nigeria is a very beautiful country. But the problem we have is that we have strong men in this country who has decided that things will not work. The fact that the conventional banks are not working is because certain persons in certain areas have decided that the banks will not work. And because they have decided that the banks will not work, the banks are not working. And this is where the problem lies. Because they have decided that the banks will not work. So we must root out these corrupt persons in this system. We have them everywhere. Let me tell you one of the dangers we have. When you start having owners of banks sponsoring campaigns and elections of politicians, you expect them not to recoup their money through customers? They will recoup their money through the customers. We have seen that we saw that happen in the last elections when major banks executives sponsored campaigns of politicians across the nation. And today, you say these people, they will bring that banking policies that will affect that will protect the consumer. Nobody will do that. You know, the problem is that we pretend over a lot in this country. So if we have brought out these policies, now I can even tell you for free that most of these bank executives are the ones that determine these policies to protect their own interests and their own loot within the banks.
All right, Mr. Chatham, would you say that we have gotten to a time where we demand an annual public audit detailing how much these banks earn from charges, legal or illegal? Who actually benefits from this opacity that we see?
You know, the point is, most banks actually bring out what they present to be an annual audit. They present it to their shareholders and as well sometimes to the public to tell you that, oh, this is our audited account. But we all know, the Nigerian factor is the problem. We should first of all admit that we have a problem. Then we start to look for solutions to this particular problem. We have a major issue with our banking sector, a major issue that would naturally frighten any investor who do not have anybody in the Nigerian government. Because you're easily protected when you have somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. You're easily protected. So if we are looking at that, they declare dividend, It is easy to, of course, we saw the National Assembly padding budget now, so why can't bank actually pad and audit the account to fall in place? These things happen. But we must not wait until we have a complete audited account before we start asking questions. From each transaction, we should be questioning it. From each policy, we should be questioning the rationale behind each policy. Because if we wait for them to pad up everything, they will cover their tracks. They will cover that, and that's exactly what the banks are doing. They're covering their tracks, and they also have chartered accountants who would help them cover these tracks. Okay. That's why this nation is not making progress. That's why you can't even assess loans. It is difficult to assess loans from the Nigerian banking system.
Chatham 2026 January is going to be a new beginning for a lot of Nigerians because of the new tax regime and all that. Now, while this is being done, don't you think it's high time we began to talk about the Consumer Protection Agency, because you're going to have complaints, you're going to have multiple taxation. Now, the federal government is going to have states that are introducing their own also, and you're going to have complaints from people being taxed multiple times apart from the normal one. Shouldn't we have a very strong consumer protection that can really, really service the consumers so that they can embrace all these complaints that will be coming in by January?
Now, I must also make this clear. I believe that we should have a strong consumer protection. But beyond the strong consumer protection, these places are manned by people. I keep saying it. They are manned by people, and not just people. People with track record of corruption are the people manning our agencies. That's why these agencies are not working. We can have multiple agencies to check this, to check that. But so far as they are corrupt, there is no way these things will work. Corruption has dealt with us, and it has destroyed this nation. This nation is the way it is. We have every potential to be the greatest nation in the world. But the problem is we have corrupt people, and we all encourage it. We are one way or the other encouraging this corruption. By 2026, the government says they'll start taxing virtually everything. So we are now going to be a tax state. Let me tell you something. If the government was providing necessary things for Nigerians, if you want to tax them, it wouldn't be much of a problem for Nigerians. So perhaps we see the roads. But these days, a Nigerian provides his water, he provides his lights, he provides even roads for his own streets. Because sometimes in some streets, they tell the others contribute money to fix our roads. And those who stay within real estate environment, you see the real estate constructing roads for them. Now, it tells you that the average Nigerian provides everything for himself. So what does the government provide? Yet you want to tax us. Yet you want to increase everything. So the government does nothing for Nigerians. Nigerians take care of themselves. Healthcare, what is the government doing? The government is doing nothing, absolutely nothing. And this has continued. So when you raise up these concerns, they tell you, oh, your APC, oh, your PDP. That's how we dismiss things in this country, without looking at the merit of whatever complaints anybody is making and addressing that merit. We talk about setting up organizations, enough of these agencies.
Let's leave politics out of this discussion now and fall back to the regulators, because they seem to be having a problem enforcing their own rules. Now, should consumers begin to consider suing these regulatory agencies like the CBN and the FCPC, like you mentioned, the Consumer Protection rather, should they begin to consider suing them for negligence?
Let me tell you, these days, even as a lawyer, I'm afraid of our courts. Even where the courts eventually decide to do the right thing, like they did in the Polazanda issue, where the court decide to do the right thing, what happens? The problem is who obeys court orders these days. If a bank cannot obey a valid court order that was presented to them over a transaction, and the court has looked at it, they entered appearance. The court looked at it, they entered appearance. And the court said, what you have done is wrong, pay this bank back his money in 2025 exchange rates. And the bank decided to say, no, we are not going to do that, we're not going to obey court judgment. You did not even go on appeal. The fears is there for us. That is not a judicial state, the last hope of the common man. How protected are we, even from the court, even where the court gives the order? Will these people be able to obey these orders? These banks have risen to the point that they are now an institution on themselves, bigger than this nation, that they determine for themselves what happened and how these things should happen. Because they have friends everywhere. If I sponsor your election to be president or to be governor of any state, and there's a court judgment against me, I will easily call you. Please talk to that judge or talk to this person to deal with this. That's exactly what happens in this country. So that's why you see that a bank could actually even use state machineries like police to stop court officers from executing, from levying execution against a bank that has, that had clear court orders against. It tells you that the system is corrupt. A lot of us have lost confidence in the entire system. We are only living by the day. Any day we wake up to the situation of Nigeria, and we'll continue from where we stopped.
Well, quite interesting one, I must say, Mr. Chetam. I'm seeing that you have a lot of bottled up things to say against some banks, but we'll revisit that after this, after the program. Thank you so much for your time with us on the program this morning. It's a delight speaking with you.
Thank you for having me always.
Thank you for being a part of our conversation. I hope that you were able to pick a thing or two from it when I hand you over to Lagos, where we